zoom right in.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So,
Do you want me looking at the camera or looking at you for
you
this?
can look at me.
Okay.
All right. So, Christian, all right, just 3 sentences. Tell me your name, where we are, and what brings you here.
Sure. My name's Christian Lander. We're in the Penn University bookstore, and I'm here to do, or I was here to do a reading and a signing for my book, Stuff White People Like.
Okay. And just tell me what the book is about.
Sure.
And how it came about.
So the book is built off of a website that I started with a friend of mine last year, specifically January 18th of last year, and, literally 1 year from today. And it started as sort of a joke between my friend and I about what white people were doing instead of watching the TV show The Wire. And we came up with sort of, funny things because we both grew up in Toronto, Canada, in the middle of the city, really in these sort of gentrified, yuppie neighborhoods. And so the things we were coming up with, what they were doing instead of watching The Wire, was yoga, therapy, getting divorced, going to plays, things like that. And I said, all right, that's too funny. It's time to start a blog. And I just started writing because I was always just looking for a side project, just to write funny stuff. And I just kept writing and writing and writing. And all of these thoughts and sort of things that I'd noticed, because I used to be in graduate school and all the times I've lived in cities, just sort of bubbled up and came out in this blog, and the blog just took off. I mean, it was barely on the internet for a month before agents started calling, and I had a book deal barely 2 months after the blog started. And the blog didn't start on any sort of big press tour. I didn't do anything to promote it. I started it like anybody else. And so a book deal came out of that. I wrote the book. It was published in July. It became a New York Times bestseller the same month. And it's been on there for 15 weeks, and it's just been a really, really wild ride.
Awesome. So, I mean, what does that say about the power of the internet?
Well, it says it for a lot of things. One, it's the power of how fast things can grow. And what I really noticed with this book and how it was growing was, with this blog and how it was growing was, I would do interviews with the Houston Chronicle, the Baltimore Sun, the LA Times, and they would say, expect a huge bump in your traffic. And I'd look at the stats on the site about where the traffic was coming from, and it was coming from websites like StumbleUpon, which were link sharing sites where people share their favorite links with friends, and it wasn't really traditional media, which meant that this site wasn't growing through normal media. The site was growing through people forwarding it on to friends, and people forwarding it on their own blog, or people sending it through instant messenger. And I think that's what the real power was. And so all of these companies, who are trying to use it to make money are trying to figure out how to do that, and there's no formula for it. You don't know what's going to tap into people, what's going to make the average person look at something and say, you know what, I want to forward this on. And in my case, why it happened was they looked at it, they were like, I know this guy. That's why I want to forward it on. And it was a list, and then they would forward it on, and their friend would look at it, and it would just grow from there. So it really was viral, really organic.
So every week you were writing, and then the feedback would cause you to write more?
Well, I just had a personal grudge against white people that I had to get out, and so it was there was just so much humor there. So every week there was just more opportunity for humor. And I mean, in the early days, it wasn't every week. I was writing 2-3 posts a day because when you have that idea burning and and you don't, you're not thinking about this audience, you're just writing for your friends, for these 5 people. There was just so much to come out, and I was just really trying to make them laugh, and it connected.
Okay, so before we talk about like maybe 3 or 4 things, just why do you think it connects with so many people? We saw people of every race and age and color in here today.
Well, what's been interesting is at the readings that I've done, I would say that there's definitely been a diversity in race, but there's not a diversity in class. And so I think what this book really fundamentally speaks to is class and the upper middle class experience, because this book really isn't about the upper class experience. It's about the upper middle class experience. And that's not exclusively white. It's overwhelmingly white, don't get me wrong, and everyone who's a part of that class who isn't white understands that. And they understand that the tastes that come out of this book are seen as white by their peers, who are either in that group or not in that group. And I think that's what connected with it as well. And so it's still hard for me to say exactly what it is, but that would be my guess.
Okay, awesome. Let me just back up so I can see your hands.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Hey, Basil, can you do me a quick favor? Move that light back. I will tell you exactly where. Just pull it back. Perfect. There you go. Just right there is perfect. All right. And I'm going to just check focus once again. I just want to be able to see your hands because you speak
what?
so well. Union was supposed to do that. Okay.
I'm calling William Morris. I'm shutting this down.
This is the grip. Okay, so all right. I identify with a lot of those things in the book. I've never seen The Wire, but I've certainly
sure.
There's like 8 or 9 things.
Yeah.
I I can relate to. Does that make me necessarily white?
No. I mean, it doesn't make you white. But what I would ask you about those things is, do you think by liking those things, they're perceived as white?
I have my white taste, and I have my sort of urban ethnic taste.
You just explained it right there. It's exactly what it is. But you're aware of that, is what I'm saying. You know that these things, and it's not. And a lot of people with this book and with this blog misinterpret the title as stuff only white people can like, and that's not what it's ever pretended to be or ever meant to be. But you know that you just called them your white tastes, because these things are, and it speaks more to how things are built up right now. It's sort of the social and economic structure of the United States is that these tastes, these things, what they reflect is a certain level of affluence, a certain level of education, and honestly, a certain amount of free time to indulge in these tastes. And so the people who indulge in them the most are white people. And no matter how much these people don't want that to be true, it is. And so I think that's what the message is that comes out of that. And so you don't have to be white to like these things, but you know by liking them that you're joining a lot of other white people.
Okay, so this is not a racist rant over here. Reading it by yourself on your computer, you might think, wow, Christian's one of the most racist guys in the world. Tell us a story about Marlon Wayans.
Oh, I had a meeting with him in Hollywood, and he just called me the... Oh, sorry. I had a meeting with Marlon Wayans. I'm dropping celebrity names like a big dog here, but I had a meeting with Marlon Wayans, and we just talked for a little while. And I mean, I don't come off as angry. I'm not like Lewis Black. I'm not yelling, and I don't have this rage in my voice. But he was listening to what I was saying, and he looked at me and he says, "You are the angriest white man I've ever met in my entire life, and all your anger is directed at other white people." And I can't say he's wrong, but yeah, I mean that's what's come out, and it's not racist, but there is some class aggression in there. You know what I mean? There is some frustration with what I see white people doing, and what this white culture is doing, and there's some contradictions in there, and I think that there are a lot of people who are in this class and in this group who refuse to recognize any of their own mistakes or any of their own contradictions, or they fail to recognize how befriending someone of a different race just for the right to say, "Oh, I have a Senegalese friend," is racist. Like that is, you don't see that person as a person anymore. You're starting to see them as a trophy in your friendship diversity roster. And there's a problem with that, because you're not seeing past race at all, in spite of saying, well, now I'm befriending them, so I'm post-racial. It's like, no, you're befriending them, and you're turning them into collectibles.
I got you. So what do you hope people will get from the book?
I mean, I really hope what people get from the book is an understanding of some of the contradictions in all of this. Some of the contradictions of what they do and what they say, and sort of to take a critical look at themselves. Because the people that I'm writing about here have no problem casting a critical eye to what I call the wrong kind of white people, or being critical of government or politics or media or film or music or whatever they want. But they're really loath to be self-critical in any sort of serious way. To say, no, there is no privilege associated with me eating organic food. I do that for the earth. It's like, well, no, you do that because you make enough money to afford to shop at Whole Foods. And don't forget that. And so I hope that there's just a little bit of awareness and a willingness to cast a critical eye back on ourselves. And the book, it makes fun of me. I mean, this is self-deprecating humor. I mean, that's also in the book, actually, something white people like. But it's me. It's my chance. And I have one in the book. There's an entry in the book called Knowing What's Best for Poor People. Right? It's something white people like to do. And that was where I was just as vicious as I could about myself, And so you sort of grow up with these baby boomer parents on the left, and the belief is, well, you know what? If poor people had money and education, they'd be exactly like me. And that's the most egotistical, awful thing you can possibly say, because it says, you know what? I'm perfect. You know what I mean? If poor people did things right, they'd be me. That's just unbelievable. But so many people still believe it.
It's a trap Bill Cosby got into as well.
Yeah.
So you have to be careful when you get into class issues, obviously.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a tough thing for people to talk about, because implying class, and it goes with two things. So the American work ethic is really important. It's ingrained in the history of the country. Hard work is rewarded in America. Hard work is valued in America. And whenever you talk about class, that's to imply that someone hasn't worked hard. That's to say you have what you have because of who you were, what family you were born into. You didn't work to earn this. It was given to you. And people get really, really offended in that. And I'm not saying that white people in this class don't work. That's not true at all. But to forget the privilege that comes with it, I think, is a real mistake. And I think it's a real block to any sort of progress in terms of racial and class understanding in the United States.
All right, let's just three things just to.
Sure.
All right, so have you had a chance to go overseas with this, or have you gotten comments from people overseas?
I've gotten comments from people overseas. Amazingly, because it's amazing how much things can spread on the internet. I've done radio interviews from Africa, Greece, Italy, New Zealand. They're actually producing a Japanese edition of the book. Not stuff Japanese people like, but stuff white people like in Japanese. And so there actually has been a lot of interest from around the world. And man, white people are everywhere. But they all get it. You know what I mean? Everyone gets the joke here, and they get what I'm talking about internationally. It really does play more than I would expect in other markets and in other places.
Okay. All right. So just going through a couple things in the book. All right. First and foremost, Obama is in the book. A lot of talk was made about being a post-racial society. Yep. Now he's one. Can you just comment on your entry on Obama and then how it points to this?
Sure. The Obama entry is the shortest entry in the entire book. It says white people like Barack Obama because if they don't, other people will think they're racist. That's it. That's the end. That's the whole entry it is. White people can like Barack Obama for a whole bunch of other reasons. You know, Democratic Party, he's progressive, he brings hope, all that other good stuff. But to ignore that reason, I thought was particularly hilarious. And this was written at the beginning of 2008 during the primaries. And I was just amazed at watching other white people. It's like, you aren't hearing a single word that's coming out of his mouth. You don't even care. You're like, I like Barack Obama because I'm progressive. And it's amazing how many people thought Barack Obama, in his platform, supported full gay marriage. And he didn't. But nobody listened. They just made the assumption. They were like, he's black, so he shares exactly the same views that I have. And I was sort of astonished with that, to say the least.
All right, that's a good one. Coffee.
Yeah.
Just 2 or 3 sentences.
Yeah, it was the first one on the list because I always remember in high school, every year the first kid to start drinking coffee in the 9th grade was always a white kid, and you knew he didn't like it. You knew there was no way he really enjoyed coffee. He would attach a mug to his backpack to show everybody that he drank coffee in a desperation to appear cultured and older. And so there's that. That was another reason. And the next one is gentrifying white neighborhoods. The book has a gentrification timeline. When the independent coffee shop opens up, you know this neighborhood's changing, right? The one that's going to have all the special fancy beans, the small batch soda, and a lot of dudes with moleskin notebooks.
That's cool. And I guess Wes Anderson and Dave Chappelle.
Oh yeah, Wes Anderson. Wes Anderson's an obvious one. I mean, every white person in high school wants to be a music video director, and then when they get a little older, they want to be film directors, and they want to be Wes Anderson. They want to make movies like Wes Anderson because he makes films about a time that never existed. And then Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle taught white people more, this generation of white people, more about black people than Roots.
Okay. Premium juice and assists.
Oh, premium juice. This one's important. $6 bottles of juices, of organic juice. This is a good way to sort of help befriend white people. And this book is talking about how you can befriend and exploit white people. And so buying them a premium juice is almost like a guilt-inducing gift. Once they've got one, they know they owe you because they know an Odwalla is not cheap. So buying a white person a premium juice is a good way to get them to owe you. And assists, this is probably my favorite entry. It's the shortest one in the book. It's just white people feel good making passes. It feels like they're, you know what I mean? They like to help. Helps them, you know.
So basketball assists is what you're talking about.
Basketball and hockey assists too.
Okay.
But I mean, they like scoring goals in hockey too.
So we were wondering, like, was this written for black people and non-whites to read? Like, who's the target audience?
Well, the target audience was seriously 5 of my friends. You know what I mean? Who are, they all went to high school with me. They're all different races. Not that it matters in any way, but it was. Our joke was it was written for people who just got to America, you know, sort of. It wasn't specifically, because it's one of the interesting things about Canada and the U.S. and a difference is, in the U.S., it's about this idea of the racial other from white, and in the U.S., it's black 100% of the time. It's always like the opposite of white is this was for black people, whereas in Toronto, where I grew up, it was white and then everybody else, you know, Indian, Sri Lankan, Chinese, and so Filipino. So when we were writing this book, we were writing it for everybody who wasn't right. We were writing it for the recent immigrants who were trying to figure all this out at my high school to get popular. You know what I mean? And so that was sort of the fake target audience that we had with this.
Okay, awesome. And any final thoughts? What are your hopes for the future? I mean, you mentioned them earlier, but.
Well, I mean, personally or for America?
I think personally, because you kind of covered like what
Sure.
what you hope people get from the book.
Sure. Well, I mean, personally, this has been literally all of my dreams have come true from this. I mean, I have a book that was, it still is a New York Times bestseller, and no one can take that away from me as long as I live. And I've wanted to be a writer my whole life, a comedy writer specifically, but I mean, I'm a failed journalist, I'm a failed academic, so I've wanted to write for a living as long as I've been alive. And what I really hope out of this is I really want to be a comedy writer, working in film and television, and just writing cutting edge, really funny stuff is what I want to be doing. And I know how difficult that is. And if it doesn't happen, I'll go back to advertising, and I can live the rest of my life saying, I've got this book, and no one can take it away from me. And I got this unbelievable year, that I got to have of being culturally relevant.
All right, last thing, if you can look right into the camera.
Sure.
Say your name and say you're watching Real Black.
I'm Christian Lander, and you're watching Real Black.
Perfect. So who's the whitest person in the world?
Barack Obama, dude.